Right, hello, welcome to the Sisyphus complex solution. This is a standalone episode, and it's one of these ones that I generally don't really like doing this, but it's become a bit of a thing now. So it's like checking what kind of predictions that I did last year and what doom and gloom I'm going to be predicting for the year ahead. This time I've literally only just got a few notes, and I've not really done any great preparation for this because like I don't particularly like doing predictions. So it's going to be much more of a general sort of riff than anything else. But if anybody's experiencing this for the first time, well, you might be able to tell that just based off of the picture that I have alone, that I tend to think one pretty much just blends into the other and doesn't really make an awful lot of difference. So just dive straight in and see what absolute disaster it was in terms of the predictions that I made last year. So in terms of this the war situation, I basically considered that I thought that Syria was going to be one of the big situations, and that where I thought that there was going to be some sort of a conflict kick-off between Turkey and Israel, which, I mean, it still may come to pass, and there are certain things taking place at the moment that give a bit of an indication that there may, despite the fact that it's the US going in there, it still has a few things that do make me wonder a little bit as to whether that will actually eventuate. But I've given myself a cross mark and said, nope, I wasn't right about this because it hasn't happened. So obviously that when it comes down to NATO, you've had the Dutch reject just ramping up more war rhetoric as usual, and that I didn't really predict that, but it's just a bit of a note to say don't pay too much attention to these people when they're gobbing off, because that's literally all they've got. I did say that Bitcoin was going to do very well in the year, and I also said that the UK in particular was going to hit that money printing machine. But again, both of those not exactly right. Bitcoin did go up in the middle of the year, and but I think it's ended lower than it was at this point last year. So what do I know? The money printing situation has basically just been replaced with taxing the shit out of us. So there's that. So I'll give myself a X mark for that. I don't think I was exactly spot on. For the politics side of things, I was expecting lots of resignations. I'd promoted my idea, which I literally just repeated over Christmas, about the voting block, and I did say that I was going to be doing certain things around that, which didn't quite work out as intended. And I also thought there might be some sort of movements towards a no confidence vote. But I mean, yeah, there's been a few sort of sackings / resignations, but nothing really to write home about. So I'm not really going to give myself any brownie points for that. In terms of the dissent situation and sort of a replication of the sort of mini riots, so to speak, that we saw in 2024, not really. Didn't really happen. Been a few I mean, you've had the protests and things like that, and the odd little bit of skirmish and whatever, and that, but nothing on the level that has then got Starmer to do his usual response of trying to arrest every white person in sight. But, you know, I'm sure he'll try to do it again. So I'll give myself a negative on that one. In terms of the overall agenda stuff, I did concentrate quite heavily on yet more of the climate-hard nonsense. And I think we can say in terms of the UK, yeah, that I can give myself a little check mark for that. Because the more that time goes by, the more absolutely insane that Miliband gets. And nobody seems to really pick up on the notion of how many people get killed every year because of this. It's a never-ending source of amazement to me. Where, I mean, I'll give you a bit of an example. I did think that there were certain people and certain organisations, more fool me really, that I thought were good opportunities and that for being able to provide pushback. Well, I did have some level of communication with them this year. Nothing major, but I had a little bit. And it was in relation to, in particular, around the original legislation of the Climate Change Act. And I pointed out how that was created unlawfully anyway. Gave all the links and all of the correct information around it to point out that it's, I mean, even down to like the impact assessment there, complete and utter nonsense. It was based off of a just one report by an economist that was then quoting from the IPCC to say that the world is going to end. Absolute drivel, of course. But it's had not so much as a peep out of these people. Nothing at all. They're not plainly not planning to do anything with it. I did have the details in there in terms of the number of deaths, not only within the UK, but around the world as well, where you can just base it off of their figures. And nothing. Complete waste of breath. So again, it all comes down to this situation of, if you're going to do anything, it is literally up to us. Don't be looking to any of these organisations, because they're just, especially if they've been around for as long as they have, because plainly if they've been around for that long and done nothing, not really likely to do anything now, are they? So yeah, that whole agenda side of things, and that has continued into sheer lunacy. I suppose the one figure I could just reiterate, I've quite often referred to the last report that came out from was it Marie Curie, that said that, and this came out at the end of last year, and I used the particular graphic that said that 110,000 people per year were dying because of energy poverty in the UK. Well, that was just the number for the pensioners. If I stipulate more clearly from the actual report itself, you're talking about 128,000 people in the UK alone dying through energy poverty every year. And it's only getting worse. And the fact that nobody seems to bother with that, that's the insignificant part of that. And I mean, that's the part that sort of ties into your coronavirus agenda as well, where the sheer number of pensioners that were put in the care homes and in hospitals, just shoved into a room, lock the door, sign on it saying nil by mouth, and just let them starve to death. Horrendous numbers of people died in that way during the coronavirus. The only time you've seen anybody admit to this sort of stuff, and that was with the inquiry in Scotland, which then nobody's going to do anything about. I mean, the UK farce of an inquiry came out with, you could have started doing it a little bit earlier. Okay. It's amazing that nobody, whenever they want to push a narrative to say, if it only saves one life, that kind of stuff is what they'll concentrate on, whereas in reality they're just killing thousands and nobody says a word. Utterly ridiculous. And it's the fact that it's people supposedly on our side that are not saying anything. I don't understand it at all. But anyway, I suppose what I can say, that in terms of 2025 and the things that I said would happen during the year, I have to give myself and that a pretty damning report, I suppose. So let's go and see what wonders we've got set for us in the coming year then. And like I say, I'm riffing with an awful lot of this stuff. So in terms of politics, I do think absolutely the main story of the year is going to be an increasing divide between the US, Europe and UK. There's going to be certain issues that are going to be taking place whereby, because 2026 is actually going to be quite an important year for elections across a whole range of different nations and that, but obviously you've got the midterms coming up in America. Now, I tend to think that there's a range of different plans in place to be able to make sure that everything is fresh in the minds of people in the US as to why they will have to vote for the MAGA crowd, which I think is going to be an increased number of the Republican Party this year. I think the splits that have been taking place over the last year are quite a good indication as to how it is that certain people are being forced out into the open. And then they can be, was it primaried or whatever it is that takes place there. I'm not 100% certain on American style politics, but I do think that there's going to be issues take place out there. Not least of all that because of the level of interference. As much as people turn around and say, well, you get the propaganda of any election that they don't like. It's Russia's interference. Russians interfered with us and all that sort of stuff. Well, no, it's the UK and Europe and that tend to do the most interference. And then obviously on the UK side, you get a lot of the US-based retards like Bloomberg and what have you, that'll be interfering in our elections. But over here, obviously, they want that interference. So I do think things are going to be taking place in that where the US is going to be shoring up. I mean, I always find this side of things and that a little bit difficult because I've never really been 100% convinced that this whole hey ho Trump is our man type of scenario. But at the same time, there are certain things that he's getting done which make you also sit back and go, well, I'm not expecting any sort of white knight scenario or anything remotely like that, and I'd certainly think that there are issues in the US that he's not getting anywhere near at the moment, particularly when it comes down to like the more technocratic side of things, because obviously the big beasts within the technocrat system are all based in the US, and I don't see anything being done out there and that to bring them into line. And the fact that you have the likes of Palantir and so forth, that's quite an important part of the surveillance machine that this entire agenda across Europe in particular and that depends upon. But there's one point, I suppose, that is a little bit of a backup in terms of if there were to be something that was going to be assisting the rest of the world in making sure that technocracy does not go too far. And when I say the technocracy, I am now literally referring to the technology side of things, your Googles and Palantirs and all that sort of stuff. The one thing that Trump would have in his back pocket, if required, that would bring these people into order, it's the single word really, which is DARPA. The simple fact that most of these organisations have either profited from technology that has come out of DARPA or probably still depend a great deal on what comes from there even now, plus the money side of things, because as much as they like to go on about how much money they earn and all of the rest of it, it's all government contract based fundamentally. And so if anything was to be done to just threaten a little bit that revenue source, and then any sort of threat that might cut off the source of innovation, I think they could be brought into line very, very quickly. So there's certain areas around that I'd be interested to keep an eye on. But I think that is most definitely going to be the biggest story of the year, and this divide, and making sure that all of the ideologues from the UK and Europe are kept out of the US. And because it looks like, I mean, they can sit over here and get onto the mainstream media here and piss and moan like the socialist little woofters that they are. it makes no difference in America because nobody in America is interested in what the people here say. So, I mean, it's literally just crying in the wilderness. As far as the Americans are concerned, they won't give a damn. A bit more like most countries should actually be, and that could just focusing on what they're supposed to be doing themselves. But what it does then mean as a consequence is that the deeper that divide occurs, and I will go into a little bit of a war scenario again shortly, in that, but I think I will anyway. Let me just check. A little bit later on. But what I do think is going to happen here, and that insofar as this divide is concerned, is it means that Ukraine is most definitely going to be left adrift. You can have these Europeans saying, oh, we're going to give you this much money, we're going to do this for you, and we're going to do that for you, until they're blue in the bloody face. But it's money that they haven't got for a start. Now, I mean, can they just create it out of nothing and then just feed it into the money laundering machine of the Ukraine? Quite likely. But in terms of any kind of escalation or the bullshit rhetoric they want to come out with of, oh yeah, Ukraine is going to hold off Russia and beat them back and all the rest of it, no. And I think that's that kind of realisation is going to end up in, it's going to be one of two things. Either comedy boy Zelensky is going to be put in a situation where he's just going to have no choice but to call an election, and then he's going to get thrown out, and at which point it all just comes to an end, or there's going to be some kind of a little coup take place, because the one thing that the Ukraine certainly will not be able to do is depend on Europe and the UK for any sort of weaponry. I mean, all they've been sending them so far, and that is just second-hand crap. And then the new stuff that they keep saying that they've been buying and that, and oh, look at all of our new wonderful weapons. They're all shit. They are so dependent on the US, it is farcical. So I do think there's going to be some consequences around that. In terms of UK itself, much to most people's disappointment, I'm sure, but no, Starmer isn't going anywhere. This is not a man that is... He is not a prime minister. He's just literally there to be the mouthpiece. He doesn't care if you don't like him. He doesn't care if you criticise him or do anything whatsoever. And I mean, he's isolated. He gets put out in front of people to, oh, I'm going to do this week. And then he just gets put off into his little cupboard and told to shut up and wait for the next little script that he's been given. He's not going anywhere. And what you will find in terms of the UK, as I referred to in my Christmas video, you're going to start to see the implications when that devolution bill kicks in. And that's where you will start to see problems. The issue that I've got with it, though, and that is that the problems that will eventuate are not going to be within this year. I really don't think it's going to happen this year. I think there's yes, it's still the situation that the UK is in this complete blur as to being able to do anything meaningful. Nobody's prepared to do anything with any substance. In terms of other countries, right, again, some important elections around the world, but let's have a little bit of a think about issues in the European Union. I think you are going to see some serious problems. I mean, like, this is not something about kind of like war footing stuff now. This is all about domestic incidents and uprisings in domestic situations. And I think there's most definitely going to be issues in Hungary, Bulgaria, Romania, basically the Eastern Bloc of the European Union. And I think you're also going to get issues in Poland, Latvia and Lithuania. These are countries that, I mean, in particular, I think Hungary, above all, the European Union is going to really try to put their foot in there and have as many useful idiots take to the streets as possible. Because they really do not like the fact that Orban manages to be a spoke in the wheel. They really, really want rid of that man. And I think that's going to be something to keep an eye on. I think the other countries as well are steadily realising that what Europe wants to push on them is nothing like what they want to see happen. So I think there's going to be more issues in those countries. Whether it's going to be reported properly or not, probably not. I mean, that is something that I have noticed on a few occasions, and that where when you see these types of countries have these incidents in the capital, then it tends to get completely misreported, and they always claim that the people that are rising up are doing so in favour of Europe, and it's just not fucking true. It really isn't. So I think those are going to be some areas of interest later on in the year. We've also got issues coming up in terms of Bosnia and Kosovo, because they've both got elections as well. The fortunate thing that you have with that is that the US has already started to get involved to make sure that things don't kick off. Now, whether they're going to be able to sustain that, that's going to be the interesting part. Because, as I've mentioned before, and that the European Union in particular is absolutely desperate for something to kick off again in the Balkans. They're desperately trying to create that powder keg. And I think that if there's anybody that's involved in those areas, just have proper conversations with as many people as you can and tell them, look, just be bloody careful of what's going to be taking place here, because anything that they want to see happen has got nothing to do with those nations. It's all to do with being able to create a rhetoric within the Central European Union and within the UK. They don't care what happens to the people in the Balkans. They don't care about the consequences of what it is that they will start to try to initiate. So don't fall into that trap. So those are areas to pay attention to, I think, this year. Insofar as the economy is concerned, I think you pretty much know already. It's not rocket science, is it? I think the UK and large parts of the European Union are going to go into recession, and then they'll claim that they actually haven't. It'll be a bit of a Biden situation going, well, no, that's not a real recession, and that we've decided to change the definition of what a recession is. You're going to see stuff like that. I mean, you can't be losing the amounts of jobs that they're losing and then still be sitting there and pretending like everything in the garden is rosy. You cannot have the level of unemployment and inactive people in all of these nations and pretend that everything's good. It's just not. It's not sustainable. So it's going to become more apparent. So, you know, I mean, it's the usual thing. Socialists run out of other people's money, and considering it was already in shit order from the coronavirus situation in particular, then yeah, it's just going to get worse as far as that's concerned. Be mindful as well, not the fact that you will get bombarded with a whole bunch of bullshit about, oh, the government is now has done this deal, and or the government has bought this particular organisation in order to be able to create new jobs. Well, A, it won't equate to the number of jobs that you've just got rid of. And B, can people please, for the love of God, understand what command and control is? The more things that government start to take control of, the more it's shifting from command and control to control of the means of production. It's not rocket science, but again, one of those areas that nobody really seems to focus on. But yes, the economy is going to be an absolute basket case across Europe in particular. As far as the US is concerned, it's a little bit of a wait and see situation. At least they're in a position where a lot of the barriers are being taken down. So it's just a matter really of whether the domestic population will respond in kind. Because if the people can understand that the barriers are not there anymore and that they can actually start to develop their own businesses and that, and start to generate an economy themselves. If they can do that, then great. It could again be this issue of looking at it state by state, because if you're in a blue state, then naturally they'll do whatever they can to try to destroy everything. Focus on the red states and see how things go. So the war situation, now this one is actually this is actually an unusual one, because this situation has literally changed in the last day. If you remember, about 6 months ago, when I was doing the population data, and I pointed out to the population size of Nigeria, and I said, yeah, this population's getting quite big now. I expect something will happen there. And then literally a couple of weeks ago, I demonstrated how the military training college in the UK have recently been, well, within this year, I can't remember exactly when it was, and that it was, I'm sure it was like October, November time. The Nigerian military had been giving a wargaming presentation inside this military college in the UK, both of which have made me think, oh yeah, okay, something's coming for Nigeria. Something is definitely coming for Nigeria. And now Trump has gone and started attacking the Islamic terrorists that are in Nigeria. Now, there is a slight variation here, and that because when I'm talking about the war that I was anticipating to take place in Nigeria, I'm thinking along the lines of that is another one of these sorts of divisionary war theory tactics for those in the UK in particular, considering they've been training them to do this, to see some sort of long-running war between the Nigerian military and then this Islamic terrorist bloc, and something that sort of goes on for a long period of time that they conveniently then have to sell their weapons to and so forth. Now, the intervention of Trump might mean that that's actually something that has literally just put the blockers on that. Because if you stop them at the front line, then this wargaming situation has just suddenly just completely changed. So again, it's a niggling thing about whether do we is Trump doing the right thing? Is he one of them, or what? He's doing certain things and that are pissing off all the right people. So that's an interesting part. I think the intentions that they had for war in Nigeria could potentially have been scuppered. I think there's a distinct possibility that there might be some escalation insofar as the likes of Venezuela is concerned. I don't think it'll be a full-on invasion or anything like that. I think there's still the opportunity for the Syrian situation to kick off again, because, I mean, if nothing else than that, when you put a bloody an Islam extremist and that, and everybody's been kissing his ring, I mean, come off it. Leopard and spots. And then the fact that you do still have the Turks in there, you do still have the Israelis in there. It's still a powder keg. But it should be one of these powder kegs and that where it's a case of just stay the fuck out of it. Just stay out of it. And let them go at it. Kind of alluded to it already, but I do think that this year and that you will finally see what we might tentatively term as peace in the Ukraine. I think this is the year when it's actually going to happen. Possibly not any time immediately, but the simple fact of the matter is that when you've got this NATO situation where the US is most definitely pulling back, there's only so much playing Billy Big Balls that these people can do before reality hits and everybody can see that it's all just empty rhetoric, because they haven't got anything. Without America, they've got nothing. So on that basis alone, and that, I think that all of this stuff of interfering, and I mean, sure, there'll probably be a few of the attempts, false flags, and all of the rest of it, and they'll never shut up with the excuse that they've created for themselves and just blame everything on Putin. But like I say, I mean, the difficulty with that one as well, is how much is Putin involved with it himself. So I mean, he is mates with all of these people, or has been for a very long time. So, well, suffice to say, that I think that it'll be a case of no choice. With the way things are moving at the moment, it'll be a case of no choice. Insofar as terrorism is concerned, yes, of course, there will be some acts of terrorism. It's just a matter of who's going to get it this time. Obviously, I think it'd be fair to say that Australia had the worst one this year. And just the fact that that once again, the only response that you get from it is, oh, the far right are the problem. It's like, oh, just crawl back under your rocks, for fuck's sake. So the simple fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter where the terrorism is going to take place. No, none of them will do anything about it. They'll be sitting there and laughing their asses off, because they were probably the ones that organised it in the first place. So yeah, there's going to be more of this, and it's going to be more of, oh, the far right is the problem, blah blah blah. Could we get one in the US the closer it gets to the midterms? If there's going to be any sort of terrorism acts in the US, it's less likely to come from the usual suspects, insofar as like your Islamists and whatever. And that, it's much more likely to come from, yet again, another blue-haired freak, somebody that doesn't know what's in their underpants and that type of stuff. It's going to be a leftist retard, one way or the other. There aren't going to be any far right big threats. None of that's going to happen. But are there going to be acts of terrorism throughout the year? Yeah, of course. As far as the UK is concerned, I've got March in May, because I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, that there's another one of these Unite the Kingdom marches planned for May of this year. And I suppose it's going to depend on a few different factors. But the one that just keeps niggling at me is that, is it going to continue to be something that is successful? Just simply because you have this march, and then it does nothing. I mean, people will sort of sit back for a few days and go, oh, look at that, that was impressive. But it doesn't follow up with anything. So I do wonder if people are going to just keep going, oh yeah, I'm going to, unless they're just looking for a day out or something, I don't know. But I can't see the popularity of this one being sustained. I think there is one part that could be a bit of a change in the way people think, especially after the Christmas message. I think people are going to be much more inclined to be going, yeah, it's about time our resident Germans, about time there was some consideration as to what we're going to do about those people, because they're clearly not for the nation. Now, I do find that one to be a little bit of a difficult one to deal with, just simply because of the fact that I know damn well that the intent of the Fabians and the likes of your Tony Blairs and what have you, because I don't think Blair was a Fabian. But anyway, same mentality though. It's been their long intended wish to get rid of the monarchy anyway. And so it becomes a bit of an awkward situation where you might be looking towards providing some assistance to the enemy, so to speak. Because if people start calling for the end of the monarchy, then that just falls straight into their hands, And can you imagine having a President Starmer? I mean, Christ almighty. The only real solution for that one, which I've stated before, a lot of what I tend to say, and that ends up having been repetition of that because I've been saying a lot of this stuff for so long now. But the only cure that I can see for it is that people turn and say, right, we're not interested in having resident Germans anymore. If we're going to have a monarchy, we need to find the actual rightful English heir. If we do happen to have that conversation, again, the caveat that I would put to that is there needs to be a very big revamping of this Crown Estate. Because again, I don't think people understand the full extent of the rip-off that we have under Charlie Boy's system. I mean, it's a staggering amount of money, and it's not just limited to the UK either. So I have demonstrated this stuff around Canada. I've not really had time to go into all of the different nations within the Commonwealth, but there are other Commonwealth countries as well, that where the Crown Estate is very heavily not so much visible, but present, and being able to extract money, shall we say, across a whole range of different nations. So a little bit of caution required on that one. But, you know, I mean, the fact that we do have that very plain and obvious problem. I mean, again, it's not just with the monarchy and that. It's with the religious institutions as well. I mean, you might as well just call the Roman Catholic Church and the Church of England. You might as well just call them a mosque now, because both of them just seem to be absolutely adamant that we just let in as many Islamists as possible and then just call everybody that's a Catholic or a Christian. I genuinely don't understand these people, or I do. It's just bizarre. Catholics more than Church of England, really, but yeah, I mean, they're just not. They're not for the people. They really are not for the people. And again, don't get me wrong on this one. Don't think that this is me turning around saying, we have to have some kind of a pushback against Christians, because that's not what I'm saying. I think the fact that we are a Christian nation is actually a part of the building block that we do have. But we most definitely have to be looking towards a shift away from the institutional side of it. Because, I mean, it's not Christian anyway. Just on the face of it, it's not Christian. When you have that kind of hierarchical system, and you got the Pope there and that with that's basically acting as a false idol, there's nothing Christian about these people. So, I say it is a problem in so much as that it's falling into a little bit into the hands of this socialist agenda, but it can be done in such a way that we don't lose sight of the importance of what it represents, but just making sure that we have nothing to do with the particular parasites that are sitting within our houses at the moment. So I think that pretty much sums it up. I'm not entirely sure if there's anything else that I need to try to say about the year. I mean, obviously, in that the stuff that I put out on Christmas Day, I mean, I think it's only had about 13 views so far. I spent all that time thinking about how am I going to put this together for you on Christmas Day, because I actually thought that Christmas Day would be a really good idea. I thought, I remember from the few Christmases now and that as far as the internet's concerned, nobody really puts anything out. And obviously anybody that's got any brains whatsoever doesn't bother with TV. So anybody that's thinking, oh, what am I going to watch? It's going to be a bit of a boring day. I know. This one's just been released. And then lo and behold, a whole bunch of people went and put out a load of videos on Christmas Day. Bastards. Inconsiderate bastards. But there you go. It is what it is. I mean, I wish I could do something where it would be a case of right, this is the year. This is where everything starts to change. But I just can't. I can't do it yet, and I don't think anybody that's being honest could do that. Um, I mean, even when things do start to change, which they will, um, even then, I don't think we'd be able to turn around and say, okay, everything in the garden is rosy, and everything's now going to start turning around, and everything's going to be better. Because when you do get rid of all of these agenda monger retards, it's going to be a hard slog, and that to make sure that everybody plays their part. Because, as per usual, that is the key to all of these things. It takes everybody to play their part. It's not a case of, oh, here's a couple of people that are going to do a few things and now that's it. Everything's miraculously cured. I'm now going to be earning more money than I know what to do with, and everybody's going to be living in a happy land. I mean, it's not going to happen. But it would be good if we could come across a few things that actually, while I've just mentioning this, is something that's just come into my head. And in terms of a potential issue of a no, would it be a terrorist attack? I don't know. But you've got the World Cup in the US coming up this year, haven't you? Hmm. That's got potential for a few different areas of consequence. Now, I mean, hopefully, it won't be anything in regard to an act of terrorism or anything like that. But something that might be of interest there is the fact that when you do have these big tournaments, you get all of the diplomats and then the politicians and all that sort of stuff that want to turn up and show their face and that as if they actually give a shit. How many of them are going to be allowed in America? That's going to be interesting, isn't it? Because they're doing the sanctions already. Now, I wonder if that will spread that bit further, where they turn around and say, okay, so you've got the individuals that we can identify, but at the same time, you're the people that are in charge of those nations, and for you allowing them to do what they've been doing, you're responsible. So no, you're not coming to the US. Would he ban people from Brussels? Would he ban Starmer? That will be interesting. I'd like to see that, actually. And obviously, this is the point where all the leftists scream and shouting, "Oh, you call yourself a patriot. You're supposed to be supporting the UK, not the US." Ah, piss off! I don't support socialists. Anything that is going to be able to bring down these socialist retards, all for it. And it doesn't matter what country it's. I mean, obviously, in that I'm not going to do anything about other countries. They do whatever the hell they like. As long as they don't come near me, I don't give a shit. But I want these socialist arseholes gone. I want reality to start coming back into the world. Reality and some truth. None of this bloody Orwellian 1984 as if it was a bloody instruction manual nonsense. But yeah, that was just something that popped into my head. So I told you I was riffing this. So I mean, can I think of anything that is going to be positive in the year? That's a bad sign, isn't it? When you do, I don't know. Maybe the march in May, and that will be something that gets people out again. But for the love of God, do something with it this time. So I mean, if people can do this and that, and then, like I said, if they could just for once, just for once, pay attention to some of the stuff that I've been saying for all this time, create those voting blocks, follow what it is that I said on Christmas Day. Do something of value. Don't just turn up for one day, wave your bloody flag, and then go home and do bugger all. I mean, that is really the one issue that I've got with the likes of Tommy Robinson. It's, oh, I need money to do this. Oh, I need money to do that. Oh, I need money to do the other. Well, how about bringing people together and that, but not with you, because I know that you're not. I've got nothing against the fella in terms of the fact that he's able to bring these people together. I've got nothing against him insofar as who it is that he's criticising. But I'm not going to be deluded enough to think that he is some kind of individual that should be a political leader, because he just does not have that level of nuance. He doesn't have that intellectual capability to just be a bit snobbish about it. But he's in a position where he could turn around and help the people that are. Get the people from around you that do have that ability and bring them to the fore. Do something that isn't quite so bloody temporary. But, does it have the potential for something that could be a good news story? Yeah, maybe. Maybe. We'll see. And there could be some areas of good news that come out of the projects that Rupert Lowe is behind. That is it called Restore Britain? I think it's called Restore Britain. I mean, they've got limitations anyway. I am surprised that they've not really been having to go back against this devolution bill, and I don't understand for the life of me why he wouldn't realise what that was. Maybe it'll dawn on him. I mean, he's one individual in Parliament. There's only so much you can do. But there are certain things that he is obviously moving the needle on, and the fact that he's in that I always forget the bloody names of these things. It's like the Financial Select Committee, or basically the committee that narrows down to find out if we're getting value for money, which plainly we're not. If he could be a little bit more active insofar as that is concerned, I mean, it'd be good for him to pay attention again to some of the stuff I do in terms of audits, where you could literally turn around and say, well, you're costing X, Y, and Z, or you're not reporting correctly. Why is it that you are following this World Economic Forum influenced IFRS system, which is the area where they are pushing all of this DI and ESG and all that sort of nonsense on companies? Why is it that you want to be so adamant about the ideological aspects of it, and yet every single one of your departments doesn't seem to be able to have any common standard of reporting? How does that work? They'll push people on the things that don't matter and just completely ignore the things that do. Who knows? And then I suppose the other thing would be, I don't know, is Trump actually somebody that is pushing back against the blob? I say it is this problem of just one man, despite the fact that he is the president. He's obviously got that machinery that he can use around him. He is still just one man. He's still plainly got agenda lunatics in his midst. How much can you do realistically? But then, as I said before, it's let's see when it comes up to getting close to the midterms, because it is something that they like to do in America, and it does make sense that you sort of you hold back certain things until around about a month before people are going to be starting putting their X on the ballot paper. So you make sure that things are fresh in people's minds, and you just unload on a whole bunch of the stuff that we know that people hate. All of the socialist shite. If you really start to unload on that and start giving people a lot of the things that they've actually been asking for, the timing of that can be very relevant. So maybe we'll come across something later on in the year coming out of the US and that sets things up to be a little bit more important in terms of what's going to happen then in 2027, because I do also have in the back of my mind this rather unusual statement. Maybe I should have dug it out to put it up as evidence, but it doesn't matter. You can look for yourself. I'm pretty sure that Nigel Farage said that the likelihood would be that there'll be a general election in the UK in 2027. Why would you say that? Why would you say that if you weren't aware of something? So I mean, the financial situation in 2026 is going to get really bad. And whether it's that makes him think that as a direct result of that there's just going to be no way of avoiding it in 2027, that people will really just start to kick up something rotten in 2027 and then an election has to be called, or whether there's any sort of pre-knowledge of things that are going to be taking place that force that proposition. That's something of interest, I think. We'll see how it goes. But that's for what it's worth. That's my reading of things to come, so to speak, without any real evidence as such to back it up. You know, I can't turn around and go, and here's the document that says. But then I dare say nobody can do that anyway. In terms of the next video, and I think I'm going to go back to business as usual next week. You know, I'm not going to put out some sort of Happy New Year type of video, none of that. I'll just go back to doing the process and have the video released next Saturday. So that'll be what kicks off the new year. So I've no idea how long I've been rambling on for, but that'll do. And for what it's worth, hopefully you'll have a good New Year's celebration, and whatever comes, you know, do your best, and anything that you can try to do in that to make your life that little bit better in 2026, all power to you. All right, cheers to that. All the best to you. See you again soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.